Um, all right, this is episode 35 of the podcast. It's 3 p.m. We've never done this time before. So I guess we gotta see how this vibe hits. And we would have started 10 minutes sooner, but I spilled a whole coffee on the floor under my desk. It's carpeted. And as I was cleaning it up, the surge protector started making weird noises because it actually got all over there too, and probably almost electrocuted myself. How's your day going, Steven?
Good, but before we go into that, I think it's just so funny how it was like all of that happened because you had more time to do something. But then like in the world of like forked universes, it was like, "Oh, I have time." So you ran off to do something, but then it caused this accident that ended up costing more. It's just always a funny joke, I think.
It was because I forced Steven to move the time to an afternoon time. And then originally it was a 2 to 4 block, but then at the last minute I realized I had a 2 to 3 meeting. And then so we turned it into a 3 to 4 block, so a 1 hour block. And then so I hopped on the Zoom right away, right out of my meeting. Really had to go to the bathroom, but I knew I'd already cut down half of our available time. So I was just gonna go right into it. And then Steven was like, you know what, I actually have more time, so I don't have to leave at 4. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to the restroom. I'll be back. Came back, sat down, and then spilled the entire coffee everywhere. And then so we are about 15 minutes delayed, and there's probably gonna be a coffee stain under my desk forever now.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll round out the time capsule portion of these podcasts, which I always enjoy. Sometimes even just looking back at the little thumbnails and just kind of remembering what was happening then and there. So yeah, I just got back from 2 weeks out on the West Coast, 1 week in LA and 1 week in San Diego. It was just a very full experience. Definitely in that integration period now. Well, I mean, I think I did a good amount of integration throughout, which is nice. But I think there's always something to be said for when you're actually physically touched down away from your trip, physical, psychedelic, or otherwise. So, um, yeah, it's been great, man, and we'll see like maybe how some of those things kind of naturally weave into our conversation.
Do
But
you
it was
do you do you
so
try
full.
to do you try to integrate as fast as possible, or are you more like the yo, whenever it happens, it happens? Because I think sometimes like you know how you might plan a trip to get back on a Monday so that you can make work that very first day, and then it's almost like
Hmm.
a forced reintegration. But then sometimes you purposely block it out so that you're like, all right, I'm not working Monday and Tuesday. I'll be back in the office on Wednesday or something.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think by nature, I'm more of a take it easy kind of guy, but my history has been more of like jamming it in there and going right back into it, making the most of time off and going right back into things and trying to get it. So, as I've gotten older and been, have more accommodations available to me, I've been taking more of that time. So, yeah. The funny thing, though, I will say, is one hallmark of this trip was that I spent the first 5 days in LA with my mom, just mother and son, and I always go back to the Ram Dass quote of like your parents, your family, that environment, that spatial psychogeography. That's the fastest suck in, right? So when you talk about how fast I got reintegrated, I think the fact that I lived with my parents and like when I touched down, I was like right back into it. I got sucked right back into it. I felt like I never left. Before I left, people were like, "Dude, it feels like you've been out there for a month, right?" But as soon as I got back, like into my house with my parents, it was like, "Did I even leave?" you know. So
That makes sense though. I mean, because I think environment, people, and all that stuff, like all those different cues that you're used to, um, that's essentially what you're integrating back into. You're integrating back into those constructs, those um, like expectations, those just like everything. And the environment and the people is the main thing that sets that up for most people, I would think.
yeah, yeah, totally.
How was the trip with your mom? I remember you were telling me that your mom wanted to buy some fish at the grocery store in LA because it was like $2 a pound instead of $5 a pound. and
Yeah,
then she wanted to transport that back to. Was she trying to transport it back to Virginia? Was that the move?
on her carry on. Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Um, yeah, and she not even like packing more ice or anything to it, or even I was like, let's buy a cooler. Like she didn't even think that was necessary.
Can we talk
But
about okay, I want to get deeper into this. This interests
yeah,
me. Okay, so what exactly, like, can you give specific details on like um what the deal was, when the flight was after, I'm trying to think. Okay, let's say we're playing a game and your mom really wanted to do this and you were just like either fucking with her or just like trying to play a game, like, oh yeah, this is a fucking great idea, we should get as much of it as possible. Like
yeah.
I'm trying to think what the logistical effort would have had to have been.
Um, yeah. So I mean, I think we were maybe like 15, 16 hours away from the flight, and still had we were maybe about an hour from the airport in this little hotel with a tiny hotel fridge, like. So the
So
logistical thing would have been honestly just packing it with a ton of ice, and then sending it her on her way. And like and her protesting me purchasing any type of insulation, so it would be some combo of paper bags and plastic bags that I like could convince her should be packed around the ice around the fish.
is the fish frozen?
Yeah, it was frozen already.
And do you guys have a freezer in the hotel?
We have that mini fridge where the freezer thing is like this big
Oh, okay.
and
Was
doesn't
it
freeze shit.
so there would have been fish like sitting on top of the mini bar and stuff?
Yeah, I probably would have put ice in a package inside the fridge. You know,
How much um how much fish do you think she would have bought if you had just let her?
I think she actually didn't want to buy too many packs, which made it even worse because it wasn't even like a
So
let
the
me
fixed
like
the fixed cost of
yeah
transporting it. So
yeah
she would have got like 4 pounds of fish or some shit.
yeah something like that.
Dude, you should just go fishing and catch her some fish, but maybe just not in the Potomac.
Yeah, no, Potomac.
I do
So
remember, yeah, when we used to go fishing when I was a kid, if we released the fish and let it go when we came home, my mom would be like, "Yo, where's the fish?" And we're like, "Yo, we let him go." She'd be so fucking mad. Like,
yeah,
you went out there for 3 hours and you came back with zero fish. What's wrong with you?
yep. Sounds about right.
Damn, so you guys didn't get the fish.
No, we didn't eat the fish. Like yeah, I was able to walk her down off of that, but
That's pretty funny that I could totally relate to that.
yeah, I felt so like validated from our past conversations that I had someone to tell this story to. Because usually it's just me and my sister Kim, and I was like, yeah,
You think if you tell that to like white people, they'll be like what would their reaction be? Because like for me, I'm like, oh yeah, totally. That's like every other Tuesday with my mom. You know what I mean? It'll probably some other similar shit. Um, but I imagine like a normal, I guess normal, when I say normal, that's obviously like relative. Um, but a person that grew up in America, like with the average, what I my expectation of an American mom would probably like, wait, I don't get it. You know what I mean? Like I don't know that I would be able to relate to you if I had grown up in a different type of household.
yeah. I don't think so. Yeah,
I wonder if the people listening to this pod, mainly men, and I don't know, maybe I think the other day Ivan was listening to one of our pods. Um, but whoever's listening, I wonder if they'd be able to relate to that story. It's like we're flown across country, we're in LA, it's like a 5 or 6 hour flight back, and my mom wants to buy some frozen, some frozen fish at the H Mart because there's a sale on it for $3 a pound off.
yeah. One time we got stopped by TSA because they smelled something that they thought was like a chemical. It must have been like an ammonia or stench, like a chemical, like like a chemical, but it was just our food. And it was just like our food, but not my mom didn't pack it in like Tupperwares or whatever or like seal it. It was just like wrapped in napkins, like in a bag or something. And
That's dope, dude. My mom,
but I was gonna say I think that I mean growing up I felt like no one could relate, but I am optimistic that there are people that can relate, um, in some way. Uh,
it's weird because when you're growing up and that type of shit happens, you know it's out of the norm, but you're like a lot more embarrassed about it in a way because I don't know, maybe at an earlier stage in life, you're still trying to figure out like I guess what the norm is to understand like uh how to fit in almost. And like so when you deviate from the norm when there's like a delta, there's like a mechanism or something where it's just kind of like, wait, this isn't normal. People are looking at me. What the fuck? And that causes a lot more anxiety. And obviously that kind of stays with you on some level, but I would say with certain things, you just kind of get used to it more so. I mean, obviously there's certain things where it's not all mental, because the expectation does create the physical reactions that you have within your experience. But it, I'm still embarrassed about some of the shit my mom does, but I've become much more resilient. You know what I mean? Like much more resilient.
yeah, I just lean into it. Honestly, I'm at my all-time lowest embarrassment. I just make sure that the service person isn't like I'm not ruining their day. I'm trying to like maybe I'll just tip them more on the side. I give them the like look that like look, let's just let this play out. And fuck it if people are waiting, like because that's often a very embarrassing situation where there's like people waiting. At that point I'm just like fuck you guys, like whatever. Wait as long as you have to wait as long as this needs to like play out. And that was huge for me. I was like, dude, you've like that's peace. You've accessed like this like upper level of peace.
It's pretty dope when someone that's like in the service industry can't understand and empathize.
Yeah.
I don't think it happens that often that people are like, "Yo, what the fuck is your mom doing just cutting in front of everyone?"
Yeah.
But it does. But yeah, that shit caused a lot of stress when I was like 8. You know what I mean? Like my mom used to do this play
Mm-hmm.
where she would we would go to the grocery store and she would obviously like have like a whole shopping cart full of groceries. She'll get in line with me and then she'll be like, "Oh shit, I forgot, I don't know, milk or something. I gotta go get this. Just stay here." And I'm like, "All right, cool. Yeah, I'll stay here." Because obviously there's a person in front of me. So um, you know, like it only takes like 1 minute to walk there and walk back with milk. And by the time you get back, I'll still be loading the groceries. 10 minutes later, like literally 10 minutes later, the person in front of me is gone. I've already loaded all the groceries. There's actually people behind me now. A line has built up, and then every single piece of grocery has already gone through and been rang up. And the cashier's standing there looking at me. I'm like an 8-year-old kid. And obviously the cashier probably doesn't know what to do because they can't exactly be like, "Yo, you gotta get out of line." Um, I obviously don't have a credit card or I can't pay. And I'm just standing there. I'm like, "Oh yeah, my mom said she'll be right back. It'll just be a minute." In my head, I'm like, "Fuck, it's been 10 minutes. Where the fuck could she be?" Obviously she comes back probably a couple minutes later and bumps in front of everybody. Like the line has built up and they're obviously angry. They're like, "What the fuck, man?" Like, like you just wasted like 3 minutes of everyone's time. And my mom bumps to the front of the line as if nothing happened. And you're like, "What the fuck, mom?" And she's like, and I think,
As if nothing happened is so key to that story. But
well, for
yes,
her,
please continue.
nothing happened. For her,
Yep.
literally,
Yep.
I mean, the people that are, what are those called in video games? The characters that don't like matter.
NPCs.
Yeah, to her, the people that built up in line behind me, the three full carts of people that obviously had shit to do, um, better shit to do than stand there and wait for her to come back with her items. Those are NPCs. You know what I mean? They what does NPC stand for?
Non-playable character.
Yeah, those are non-playable characters to her. They don't matter. Um, but obviously, for us, of course, you have to grow up understanding that people matter in order to exist in the society we live in. So very anxiety inducing. But I would say probably help build character or empathy or compassion or something. I don't know. Probably wasn't all negative to have to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a silver lining to everything, you know. Of course. I think what's funny though when this came to mind is that like I've seen a lot of memes on this, like really popular memes of like having the relatability of having to wait in line while your mom leaves or whatever, which tells me that like everyone, like so many people can relate to this. But it's funny, right? Because but this specific type is like not relatable to everybody. Like the way Asian moms will like kind of do it and put you through it. And it's again, it's a great again, like, you know, I guess another example of like the whole individual experience versus generalized experience thing where you talk to someone, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, I remember that was like terrifying, I know what that's like, but you don't really know what this one was like, you know. Like it's not the same. So
Yeah, I wonder what type of shit my mom does. That would be that same level, but for me now, it'd probably have to be like pretty blatant nowadays. I mean, most of the shit my mom does, it seems very blatant, but it'd have to be like a 10 out of 10.
yeah, yeah, for me it's been one that my sister Kim and I are navigating as we take care of our parents more is dealing with healthcare workers, right? Like that is a just the biggest hairball, biggest landmine thing you've ever experienced because there's like Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance, and all these providers in network, out network, like pre-approval, all that kind of stuff, and like take the example of trying to get dentures made, right? My mom was trying to get dentures made, and these poor folks had to remake those dentures so many times, like so many times, and you know, because there's all these fixed costs now and there's so many moving parts and the systems have gotten more complicated and my parents have also gotten, you know, less proficient, so it's like the perfect storm of craziness. um but yeah, those ones can stress you, I would say.
Yeah, definitely sounds stressful. Hopefully character building long term,
Yeah,
but definitely stressful for sure. I
yeah,
do not I do not envy the the position. Um I wonder, yeah, dude, even like just dealing with healthcare workers when my mom is like, I don't know if you ever remember your parents taking you to the doctor, like when you're a kid. I'll be at the doctor, my mom's arguing with the doctor and shit, and I'm just like, dog, this dude's the fucking doctor. He probably knows more than you, mom. And she's like, nope, I no way. Like,
yeah,
and I'm just like right in front of him too. And I'm like, yeah, this dude's about to like treat me. Like, why are you trying to piss him off? Like, I don't know. It's just fucking hilarious.
yeah. That's one of my two truths and a lie. I haven't used it, but people keep telling me to use it, which is like the first time I've ever been to the dentist was when I was 24, I think. Like just because that's not a thing. It wasn't a thing because we didn't have dental insurance, and my mom was like, "Fuck it, we'll just I'll take care of your teeth for you," and it worked out. It worked
That's
out, you know. But
that's pretty funny. I remember when I was a kid, like I was like 8 or something, right? And I was I was playing tag with Z and O and one of our friends in the parking lot at a grocery store, and I was running full speed, and Z's my older brother, O's my younger brother, and O was probably like maybe like, I don't know, if I was 8, he was probably like 3 or 4, and I was running full speed, and O's like a toddler almost, and he just like walks in front of me, and I dive to get out of the way so I don't like run full speed into O, but I landed on the asphalt on my face, and then my whole, like, I ripped up my whole face. It was just like I had I had like a gash here, like my nose actually split, like this thing like just like split off, and then I had like this huge gash here. And then my mom took me to the, I mean, so she was in the store getting groceries, and I walk in the store and I'm holding my face and it's like covered in blood and shit. And Oh my God, dude, it was bad. And then so she took me to the hospital, and then we waited at the hospital for like, I don't know, it must have been like 4 or 5 hours just to get seen, because it was an ER, but it was like very like crowded at the time. And it was just imagine a waiting room just packed full of people. So, it took us probably 4 or 5 hours to just go back and see the doctor. So we get to the back, and they sit me up on like the I guess like the table that you sit on for them to examine you. And the ER doctor's examining. He's like this old Filipino dude. He's probably like maybe like 55, 60. He just looks like this old dude that probably could be my grandfather or some shit. And he looks at my face, and he's like, looking at it and stuff, and he's like, picking around on it. And he's like, yeah, I think it's gonna require a lot of stitches. And then he like starts to like, tell my mom, it's probably gonna be like, like a couple dozen stitches. And he goes to get like his stuff to start doing it, and he comes back. My mom's like, no. My mom thought he was gonna go get someone else to go do it. And he came back like as if he was gonna do it, and she was like, no, you're not gonna do you're not the one that's doing this. Like, you're just an ER doctor. You're not touching his face. I'm not letting you touch his face. And I'm like on the table, I'm like, yo, we've been sitting for 4 or 5 hours, man. Like, I'm just lucky this dude's like being nice to me and shit. And the dude's like, I mean, yeah, I've given stitches a lot before, I could totally do this. And my mom was like, no, no, the fuck you're not. And I'm sitting there thinking like, man, fuck, uh at this point, we can't let this guy touch my face, because he's probably fucking like, like
He
not
wouldn't do
happy.
a good job now
Yeah, no,
at
at
this
this
point.
point,
Yeah,
like he's gonna fuck up my face for sure.
yeah,
And then
poison the well.
I think it was like a Saturday or some shit. So my mom just sat there and was like, she was like, we're not leaving, and he's not touching my son's face. We need to call a specialist to see, like somebody that does like actual like reconstructive like surgery type shit. And then so she just fucking we just sat in the fucking waiting room. They called this lady who was like a face, like, I guess she does like cosmetic surgery type shit. And she was like very like well known in the area, but it was Saturday, so they couldn't even get her on the like, like whatever. But my mom wouldn't leave. And then eventually this lady shows up in fucking street clothes. And it's the lady, I don't know how she came, but then she ended up like fixing up my face and all that stuff. And I think she did a really good job. But like the whole time I was just like, holy shit, like, um just let this guy do it. But I mean, it's weird because when I was 8, I was probably like, yo, you can just let this guy do it. It's like not a big deal. But looking back on it, it probably was a big deal. If this dude fucked up my face, and like, because there's no obvious scars on my face. Um, but yeah, it was just something that only an Asian mom would do. You know what I mean? And I guess it worked out in the end in the way that she knew how to strong arm the situation. But it was definitely something where I was like, hey, maybe we should let this one go, mom. And she's like, no, fuck it. So I don't know, man. There's something to be. There's a lesson in there somewhere.
Yeah. Uh, I hate to bring politics into it, but it's a topic that gets me really fired up, right? Specifically, like in our peer group, because uh, you speak from where you speak from where you're from, right? And I think the big theme that I've extracted out of this experience with my mom, and honestly reevaluating, I mean, understanding everything, like from her relationship to her family to how that passed on this way, and how it's kind of like circled back now in adulthood, right? With some type of like role reversal or symmetry. Is that like, we talk a lot about, hey, we got to do better. Hey, more mental health resources. Hey, more this, right? But I would suspect that a good majority of our peer group in this demographic also struggles with this with their parents, right? Being immigrants and that acculturation and everything. That, like, I have pulled out all the stops to try to help my mom, not try to change her per se, but like, look, like that type of behavior, like when we're talking about like people who are not getting vaccinations or not wearing masks or all that kind of stuff, and we like criticize those people as the other, not realizing that, look, that's that person, where they're coming from, that viewpoint, that perspective, that worldview is like your own mom, or dad or aunt or uncle, right? Like it's right there in front of you. And it's right there in front of you to try to work through, right? And help. But if you can't do it, who's gonna do it, right? Like, how do you do that at a societal scale? Like, how do you change, like, get people to budge or shift from something that they won't. Like, it's not that even like it's not even like they're like just like comfortable in that position. It's like they're like digging in their heels in that position, right? So it's, I know, it goes back to like, I mean, you got to just respect people for who they are and where they are, and find ways of working around it, right? Like, I've gotten so much more success flowing with my mom and wrapping around her. Like I said, I don't get freaked out right now when she does things like this. I just try to figure out where I can like ease it, right? So anyway, I wanted to throw that out there.
It's gonna be a lot harder to do it on a societal level. I mean, I can just imagine myself running into someone like my mom and being like, "What the fuck?" Um,
Yeah, yeah,
because you have to be able to empathize with the individual for long enough, uh, or have been around them long enough to view them as an individual in order to empathize with them. I'm not sure which comes first, but obviously being around someone for long enough, or empathy. I'm not sure which comes first, but maybe in different situations it's situational. Um, yeah, man, I don't think that's an easy way to solve, or there's no easy solution here, because you need to raise everyone's level of empathy across the board somehow. But in order to do that, you have to view people as opposed to, this guy identifies with this group, and you generalize the whole group, and so you're just like, oh, this guy's in this, I guess, like a mental bucket, and then you treat that mental bucket like a certain way. But I mean, it's people that are in that mental bucket. I don't know if you've been paying attention recently. That convoy that's coming through DC.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um,
Vaguely paying
okay,
attention.
so I've been kind of, I would see it on R Nova, or like, I think the IG, I follow an IG called Washingtonian Problems or something. So sometimes they post content on that stuff. And I think for like they've been here for like the past like week or week and a half or whatever, trying to protest, but they haven't really like done much, and people are just making fun of them, because they just like go around the beltway during rush hour, and it's just like normal traffic, and it like pisses them off that they're in traffic and they're trying to cause traffic. It's just like, yo, yeah, you just became part of traffic. Great job. Um, but I think recently they started like trying to drive through like DC, like going up 395 and going through DC during rush hour, and actually causing like real like congestion and shit like that. And then the way the police are handling it is they block every single exit going into DC, so these guys can't get into DC. But then it fucks over everyone else that's trying to go into DC. They actually have like work in there. And there was a video on R Nova, and one of these guys was just like yelling out of his window at like regular workers. Like, this other dude in the car was like, yo, dude, I'm just trying to get to work. What is what you're doing gonna solve like anything? Like, it's just ruining like my day, bro. And this dude's like, the guy in the car is the convoy protester, was just like yelling at him. He's like, well, you support Biden and you're probably BLM, and so you've ruined my last 2 years, and all of this, and this, and he's fully like um he fully thinks he's right. Like, he really does think he has the moral like upper hand here, and this poor dude is just like trying to get to work, and he's actually, the way that he was presenting himself, he's actually was trying to have a conversation with this guy, but this dude literally came out like, guns blazing and shit. And I was just thinking like, damn, like this guy's like a fucking asshole. Like, how do people get like that? But then like, it's so hard to take a step back and be like, yo, this dude is an actual human, and he got this way, through his environment, through the people around him, through whatever happened to him growing up, like whatever traumas happened to him that he's conscious or unconscious about. Like a lot of things probably happened to this dude for him to get to this point, to feel like, that he needs to like drive to DC fuck up traffic when gas is like $5 a fucking gallon, and and somehow feel that's the more like that he has the more upper hand to do something like that. So I guess going back to what you were saying about like trying to empathize with these with people in general, even the people that have like these relatively backwards views, considering where we're looking at them from. Like, how do you do something like that? Um, I don't have an answer, but I think what you were saying just reminded me a moment when I could have done that when but I was probably like, man, this guy's a, I'm glad I didn't have to drive to work in that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so this is where I've my latest position is a patriarchal one, right? Like we don't like to say we don't like to say up front that like not everyone has the same level of aptitude and competence, right? Like I mean, compared to some people, I'm sure like, geez, I need them to be making the decisions around me, right? Like they need to like predict what I would think and like make a decision on that, and that goes up, however high it goes, and obviously when it goes up, the threat, the risk of corruption and insidiousness and conspiracy also goes up. So don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that, right? But if we were to look down from where I'm at, like let's say the people that I'm actually actively trying to take care of, like be a fixture in the community for, right? Take care of, like whether it's people I've met in my Muay Thai gym, right? Or actually even members of my own extended family. Um, I like, I've realized that society just has to work around them. Like that's just the way it is, you know. Um, you you really can't do anything about it, right? And you can't leave them out to dry either, because we're all connected, right? People don't realize that, forget that we're all in this like ship in the middle of the ocean, like thinking that like everyone's on their own ship. It's like, no, we're actually on one ship, right? Ship goes down, we all go down. Um, but yeah, there's no changing. Like we're not all equal in that sense, right? We're all equal in our right to, and this is where the founding fathers, people always kind of conflate this. Like they always mix up like rights with like the Bill of Rights and all these other things, right? They only say we have these couple rights, the inalienable rights, right? Pursuit of happiness, like all that kind of stuff. All the other stuff, hell no, you don't get rights. You're part of society, you know. You don't get rights. Like society tells you, like you have to go to public school and you can't drive this thing and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. That was a little bit rambly, but like this idea, I think both sides of the political aisle in the country right now have almost kind of forgotten the fundamentals of government and society, like what it means to say that like you've signed up to be a part of this team, right? Like and I'll close it with this, but I think it kind of is another way of wrapping up my point here. You know, with the war in Ukraine and everything like that, people have been asking me a little bit like, would you like consent to the draft, right, if it happened right now or something like that, right? Which is an interesting question itself, because then it brings back all these questions too about like, what is your role in society? Like, what's your obligation? So
You know, it's funny when you ask that question, would you consent to the draft if it happened right now? Um, there was like a no hesitation, no in my head. Like no, like zero hesitation. I was like, obviously, no, dude. Um, uh,
right, because, and I would, sorry to interrupt, but absolutely, me too, and for most people, right? But and my larger point here that I haven't said though is like, so much of what we are experiencing, I think, is because these are symptoms on the other side of like a country hitting its peak. You know what I mean? Like we hit our peak, and we're just on the decadent regression side of it, which is why statements like "Would you sign up for the draft?" are like, hell no, because we've seen all the warts, we've seen like we've experienced all the privileges, and now we're experiencing all the bad parts of like regression. But if we were on the up and up, right? and it was like, would you join the draft? Like, we could probably conquer this country and fucking take all their shit and be the winners. Like, because why can't we should all admit, isn't it? Shouldn't we try to be number one? Like, isn't this a game and we're trying to be like, you want to be the best, the U.S. citizen? Like, I don't know.
I feel like government is a strong construct, nationality and stuff like that, but it's probably not the strongest construct during a time like this. It was well, actually, let me think. When is nationality the strongest construct? Probably in times of like united war, right? Where we're like, okay, we have to do this together.
Yeah, like
Um,
sorry, we go back. When we decided to invade Afghanistan, right, in Iraq, like when we started, that was 100% on board. Like people in the service today, you ask them why they joined it, it was because we got attacked, right?
mhm.
And yeah,
Yeah, widespread constructs that affect super large groups of people, like nationality. Um, that's like those are like really interesting because it's kind of like it kind of plays in the background. I mean, I'm American, you're American, but what does that do and what does that mean? How does that affect you, when you're in America or when you uh, go traveling somewhere else out of the country? Um, you know what I mean? And it gives you some sort of some so like it gives you some sort of like I don't know if it gives you clout, like an American passport. Like when you're in another country and they're like, oh, this dude's American, so he has money.
100% it gives you clout. 100%. Having done the backpacking thing, it gives you clout. Yeah.
Yeah, and it gives you clout, and it's kind of like, so it affects the way you act, but it also affects the way other people treat you and all this stuff. Uh, but no other. Like you were never like how would it feel? You remember when we were in Asia and you were walking around with us, but you had been in Thailand for like a year, so you were like tan as fuck. And like it was I guess me and Karen, Payam and Wasima or whatever, but then it was you like walking with us and everyone thought you were like our tour guide. Um like we've never been treated like outside of the country as like non-Americans. You know what I mean? I wonder like how much different it would feel to like have a different a different like nationality projected onto you.
Well, I mean, it's funny because if you just, yeah, but like domestically, right? We kind of go through that every day, just being, you know, I guess, minority first generation. But yeah, abroad, it's so different.
I don't even view like I don't know. I mean, I obviously been privileged to grow up in like Fairfax County and such. So I don't even I mean I and obviously I look different than like a white dude. But there's enough different people or enough minorities where it's like to me, I'm like, yeah, we're all American. And I guess some people probably disagree with that shit. They'll probably be like, go back to your country. And I'm just like, okay, well, here I am. But I don't feel like out of place or anything, you know what I mean? Like I feel like this is all I mean, I don't know. I guess I got indoctrinated by saying the Pledge of Allegiance probably like probably like 3,000 times growing up or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're a great example of actually where I think that the whole identity politics stuff is a little bit overblown. And again, I'm venturing into no one watches this, so like whatever, let's just get canceled for it. But um, yeah, I mean, I have friends who were like obstinate in that like they hated their ethnic name, right? Anything that made them different, they just didn't. They despised it. Like seriously, you know. Um, I had an American name, but also a funky last name, but also brought weird smelling food and like was definitely different, right? But I also liked being like it wasn't a big deal for me as much to be different. And then for you, it's like well, you had a completely ethnic first name, and didn't really grow up around like a lot of Asians, I would assume, down in Woodbridge, or at least Vietnamese people, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was like maybe one Vietnamese person in my grade, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
Z, I guess. Um, but yeah, yeah, the name thing definitely matters a lot. Because it wasn't always like, oh, cool, like I'm proud to have like a different name. Uh, because in the beginning, obviously, when you're 8 and kids are like, hey, what's your name? And you say hacker, and they're like, oh, that's funny, and they start making fun of it. Then you
Yeah.
kind of have to like, it forces you, it's a forcing function to become either more resilient and I guess like wittier or character building or whatever you want to call it, or like you, I guess like reject it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that the pendulum is just swinging. It just maybe it's just swinging back and forth. That's it, and it's at this one extreme end, um, where we're just hyper analyzing and interrogating and aware of like how people should treat each other and talk about each other, right? Um, but in doing so, you erase the individual, right? Like by definition, necessarily, if you're going to establish a group like coalition around it, you erase the individual. Like you erase like people who like, yeah. I mean, I was a target of a lot of racist jokes. Yeah, like I went through bullying, but like luckily I came out stronger. And not it's not the case for everybody. I'm not condoning any of that kind of behavior, but there is a balance, right? And you don't want to like in coming up with some kind of like big policy on it or position on it. You're you just got to know that erasure is going to happen of people. Like not everyone is in that same group, you know. Even if we all have black hair, squinty eyes, or whatever, and tan skin, yellow skin, it's like I don't know. Like you're not gonna get everyone on board, like because everyone is so different. Like people are, and this is a big point, right? Like race doesn't actually exist because you pick any other attribute, and we're more alike on that attribute if you choose it as the axis than race, you know. But if you choose race, you're gonna have more disparities within your in group than a different category. It just happens to be that race is like most salient and spicy, you know. Has a bad history with it. Don't get me wrong. Like so,
It's easy to pick race though. Is that what you mean
yeah,
by saying that it's salient?
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I'm not disputing that. There's a reason why race continues to be the one and has been for like human history. But when you talk about like because a lot of these conversations like they're very academic. Like when we talk about critical race theory, right? That is people forget that like critical race theory is more of like a academic tool, right? Like a discursive tool. Like how do we like uncover, re-examine, all that kind of stuff. But it's like it's more on the is part. It's not as much on the ought part of like okay, how do we translate this to actual policy and what have you, right? And so my contention is that if we're talking about things like race from a lofty, abstract, philosophical sense, then like we need to be clear about where we're talking about it that way versus where we're talking about it as far as like actual prescriptive policy, because those two things are almost in tension, right? Like yes, race exists in all these different dimensions and these balances, but when it comes down to it, right, how does that actually materialize and manifest in like the real world?
What is explaining like I'm 5, what is critical race theory? I know there's a lot of controversy around it.
Yeah. So I am not well. I'm very ignorant, right? But I'm gonna just put out what I understand it to be, so that we can just talk about it. My understanding of critical race theory is that like it's a way of examining um, the effects of policy, right? Around race, or sorry, it's like so. Here's the way I look at it, right? So you have a policy that you write down, and it's written agnostically, neutrally, and almost everyone who looks at it would be like, "This is a good thing." Like, yes, this is fair. There's no way that this will be unfair, right? But when you actually apply it to existing inequity, right, you'll notice a pronounced effect across these different groups, and particularly around race because of the the history of this country and what have you, right? That like, and I don't have an actual example off my head, but a lot of it in real estate, a lot of it in housing, like all those regulations, like they disproportionately hurt this group more. Like a voter ID. That's a good CRT example, right? Like requiring ID at the voting booth, right? A lot of people are like, yeah, why not? Like we all have a number, like social. We have this thing. We should use it to help with voting integrity and all that kind of stuff. Well, what's the big deal? But when you examine like people who have access to ID versus the other forms of identification that should be sufficient enough to cast a vote, right? Because I guess policymakers are saying like, look, we're not willing to pay the cost of transitioning to this policy if it means that we've disenfranchised like a bunch of these groups who now can't vote, right? Even though by all intents and measures they are should be allowed to vote. Like they should just be able to cast their vote and go on with their life, So that's kind of like the quagmire that we're in a lot of places.
So it's kind of like understanding the second and third order consequences of laws that you've created, and
Yeah.
its relation to race, and also implying that um, a lot of these second and third order consequences can have negative effects for certain, I guess, like races or groups of people. Um, Man, I can see why it's a controversial topic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically it. I try not to use those words because I use those words often. But yeah, definitely the like emergent, effects of policy.
Hmm. I wonder if I should form an opinion here or later.
Yeah, it feels like we're coming out the gate with this one because now we know only Min watches. But
Um, I don't have an opinion yet. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely policies that are that have second and third order consequences that only hurt specific groups of people. But I can see how that could, if you apply that lens to a lot of different things, it could maybe misinterpret some stuff too.
yeah,
Um, but they're definitely, yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna form an opinion right now.
my only opinion on it is like everyone like, and I don't, again, I don't think everyone is on board with this. Like understanding precisely what that type of analysis is, right? Um, and also I think my opinion on it is actually this, that it has to be case by case in almost every situation. Like whoever is in charge at that level, right? The program, whatever it is, like should budget time for that type of analysis and make that decision at the level of analysis that they know best, right? And that's all we can do. But it's not. It's a gut. I mean, it's like not an obvious call, you know. So
Oh, definitely not an obvious call, man. Seems like there's plenty of gray area on this one.
yeah,
What do we want to talk about next? I feel like we covered a lot today.
yeah. We're at 45. Oh, we're at an hour.
Now, dude, I spilled coffee on my shit and pushed this back 15 minutes, remember?
Oh yeah, the Zoom's been running since then. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Um, I don't have a good segue into this topic. And I'm not sure if this will, um, I wanted to ask the question, because I was thinking about it for myself like sometime last week and I couldn't come up with a good answer or one that satisfied myself. Um, what is your definition of mental health? And what are some obvious signs or some signs that somebody has a good mental health from the outside looking in, and maybe even from the inside looking out, if you have any signals for that? Because I was thinking like, and I wrote about it. I tried to write about it in one of my morning journal, but after 5 or 10 minutes, I still couldn't get to an answer that I was like, oh, I'm happy about this. Um, like physical health, you can see it. Like if somebody starts going to the gym, probably within 3 weeks, they'll start seeing stuff in the mirror, assuming that they have a proper diet and they have a proper workout regimen. Probably within 3 months, like they'll have a complete transformation, if they hadn't been working out previous to that. Um, and they could take a picture and put it on their IG, before and after, and people be like, oh my God, like, keep up the good work, you're doing great. Um, but that's physical health. You can see when someone's physically unhealthy or healthy. But with mental health, it's much less obvious, because because your life experience is entirely an internal experience. Like only you experience it. So when you talk about someone's mental health, I I think you're talking about the upkeep of their internal experiences, whether it's positive, negative, or whatever. I'm not even sure what measures we're taking here. But how would you dictate? I guess the question is, like, if you work out 3 months, or for 3 months, and you eat well, you have a six pack. What's a six pack for mental health?
Very coincidental question that you ask. First of all, what is health? I would say, right? Like a person with six pack is not necessarily healthy, by the way, right? Neither is a person who like runs too many marathons or does too much CrossFit. Um, I would venture to describe health as resilience, right? The ability to maintain a homeostasis, right? And I'm just doing this on a fly. I don't know, like you know what I mean, like keeping your baseline, whatever that is, and yeah. So that's what I would describe it as, And now some people like they they might have had baseline as a kid or some point, or experienced baseline, or they might not have ever experienced baseline. Like I think we all have our thriving state, right? And yeah, being healthy would be um, so one, right? Having the the knowledge of what to do when you have an affliction and you need an acute remedy, right? Just like if I come down with a flu, right? My immune system is just already taking care of like a bunch of things. Like most of the stuff doesn't even get to you. But if like I need an acute remedy, I know how to take care of it, right? So that knowledge, and that's actually just prefrontal cortex, intellectual, operational knowledge, right? But then over time, by practicing these different remedies at different levels, right? Then you're also training your subconscious, your automated processes to also do the same and lift your baseline, right? Like slowly lift your baseline, and then so someone who's healthy, I think I would look at them. I'd be like, okay, does this person know how to take care of themselves if and when shit happens, and then when they're doing nothing at all, like nothing, like are they are they still afloat? Like can I send? Is there energy? And it's funny. I use that word here in a rational way. I don't mean to invoke woo woo stuff. Like you go in, you say hi to your buddy. You see his energy. Like is this person well? Are they bright? So
So like the vibe they give off.
yeah, the vibe, and it doesn't mean like manic happiness, right, or excitement or anything. It's like a contentment, like like a solidarity of like inner.
It's hard to describe mental health for me, because it's like, everyone talks about like mental health stuff, right? And I feel like I should be able to define it better, just based on how much, like, we think or talk about it.
You know,
But I can't, which
it's
makes it
funny that you
like,
bring this up. because I actually spent this time writing this huge post that I didn't post or might not post, but on mental health. But there was that star soccer player from Stanford that killed herself last week.
Hmm.
And so that's like the big mental health thing right now. Like there were no red flags. No one even has any idea, really. I mean, there's one small breadcrumb of why, but like by all measures, she was like very mentally strong. I mean,
Hmm.
Stanford star athlete. She like won the shutout game. Like athletes in particular, right? You say those people have strong mental, like they have strong minds because they can perform under pressure and practice day in day out while keeping up academics and family and all that stuff. But some of them have the most precarious mental health. They're, being perfectionists, being anxiety ridden, you know, being evaluated by performance and being seen like so. And when that tower falls, it falls very catastrophically.
Yeah, because if you're looking for some external cues that somebody has strong mental health, a lot of the like a star athlete who's able to perform at an elite level physically. So obviously it looks like they're because I guess there's an assumption, at least in my head, that if you have strong mental health, it's kind of like mental health feeds into physical health, which feeds back into mental health, and they're correlated one way or another. Um, and you're right, from the outside looking in, that person looked like they were mentally healthy. They have all the signs of it, physically healthy, uh, performing at an elite level, not just at something physical, but something mental too, like Stanford academics and all that stuff. But I mean, are there no signs then? You know what I mean? In a case like that, is there is the measurement that we have of mental health like off? Um, you know what I mean? Like how can you tell? When afterwards we're like, yo, were the signs there? Like when you talk about like a dude, like let's say Anthony Bourdain or Robin Williams, and these people, and they external signs point to, oh, this person's like thriving in a way, but internally they're not. What is that?
What is what?
Like like the signs that we are looking at to depict whether or not someone's thriving was entirely off in those cases. Like what signs were we picking up to define that someone's thriving, and what signs should we have picked up to have a more accurate depiction in those cases, I guess would be the what is that? I don't know the answer, and I don't know if you know the answer either. But that's why we're here, right?
Yeah. I don't know the answer. I mean, I think that you bake into the system, right? It's in places where you know that those will be harder to find, right? Like checks somehow. Um, and I mean, it's even then it might not happen, right? Like, I mean, these types of people, perfectionists, and I actually speak from experience here, by the way, are hyper good at showing you what they want you to see, right? Like they're really good at it. Like um, even to themselves. Maybe that's part of it too as well. Like I'm happy, or I shouldn't be feeling this way. Like I have such a good life and all that kind of stuff. So I think almost when people are doing too well, that is one flag. You know, um, like hey, look, everyone's human. There's no way you can be like good. You can be like having a good relationship with your parents and your friends and a significant other or partner, right? And like be in some extracurricular and a leadership role in like five of those things, right? Like and like your own personal hobby, because everyone also needs a hobby where they're just decompressing, right? And going out in nature, like when I think maybe if you established a rubric, like you said, like how do you define mental health? It might be things like that, right? Like how's your spirituality taken care of, like all that kind of stuff, right? Do you have a girlfriend? Like people who let's say have all friends of one gender, right? I would say like, hey, you're missing something in your diet. You're missing like girlfriends or guy friends, right? Like that's and so if you establish that kind of rubric, and then you like look at it and you're like, wait a minute, this person is A's on every like they're literally good at everything. That's like there's something we're not accounting. There's a dimension we're not attribute we're not accounting for. Right? That's a red flag, right? It's too much of a statistical anomaly, like outlier. So, I mean, and you're talking about cases where you can't tell, right? We're talking about that specifically. So, yeah, and I mean the other thing is just like you have to have someone who um, you trust to say those things to, and honestly, this is where therapy comes in. Like, I think it has to be someone that's removed from your life, right? Like, a lot of the times people will say, but I had such a great relationship with him or her, right? And like we talked about anything, but just because you're someone they know, that is a canyon of a difference between what you want to say and don't say to them. And so I think having a third party therapist is really helpful. I went to that recent yoga retreat, and what's really funny about it is that I went with no one I knew, like, and it was like a plan B, but I loved it. That should have been my plan A because I just got to say whatever I wanted and no one knew what I was saying and no one knew anything, right? And so I would put that up there too. Objective third party as like super critical part to maintaining mental health or checking on it or surfacing it. But it's funny, sorry, just I think everyone can relate to this when the doctor asks you like, what recreational drugs have you done and what's your sexual history? People always like lying straight up, right? Like, it's so hard. It's also hard to tell somebody that you don't know this stuff and be honest, even though they're bound by the Hippocratic Oath and they'd be like deboarded and delicensed if it ever came out. But you still won't do it. You still won't tell them like the truth, you know. Helping people tell the truth. That's the thing.
Yo, that's hard, man. Some people don't want to know the truth. How are you supposed to help them? I
Well,
mean,
yeah. Go ahead.
we're probably all lying to ourselves on some level.
I think what you do is you just do data gathering together. Uh, there's a blog post I read a couple years ago, and James Clear might have also talked about this. It's funny, I haven't read that book, but like the first part, the first component to behavioral change is just recording the data. You don't have to do anything with the data at all. Like just get rid of that burden, but just record it. Just record it. So it might be something as simple as mood tracking, right? Today was a good day. Today was a bad day. That's it. You know, I think you will help people get closer to their truth just by helping them make small truths, right? Small, easy truths. Like, did you like that? Did you not like that? Were you happy? Were you not happy? Like, a lot of times people in our age group, right, are finding that like, hey, I just invested all this time with this group of people and it didn't make me happy, right? And that's a hard truth. It was like, like how many times did you have to go through that to be like, damn, I'm not happy when I do that thing. I don't feel good. It's not making me feel better. But if you just maybe had that journaling practice in place or something, you might have found that earlier.
So we have a mental health epidemic right now, right? Relative to the times. How do you think that's going to get solved? Or what needs to happen? Sorry, I'm asking these like big questions that no one has answers to, as if you have the answer to them. But I'd like to know what you think, just in case.
Thanks, man. Well, here's the thing, right? Like, I hate to dominate conversations, but I always have some kind of answer to something.
All right,
It's
perfect.
like very rare that I have no answer to nothing. But there's this meme that's been floating around that like millennials got the short end of the stick. Like we've had 4 once in a lifetime events, in our like time here. but actually, when you go back through history, we're not that remarkable. You know, Steven Pinker writes this great book on, I can't remember the title, but like he makes a rational case with data that like life is like humanity is getting better like on all across the board. Like look, like forget the negative news. Like I'm gonna back it up, right? And I think that when you look back on history, humans have gone through some tough shit. You know, like especially with the world wars, the depression, all that kind of stuff. Since the beginning of time, they've gone through some bad shit, and like I think that so there's this theory that the you know quote unquote the greatest generation, the generation before the boomers, right? Um, that went to World War II and like they just incredible innovation, all that stuff. There's this theory that like that was a result of like the Great Depression, like having to live through that as like that hardship caused everyone to like level up all across the board, and I want to be very careful with this because I'm very privileged and I don't want to like romanticize like hardship or suffering, but in a way I'm saying this to be optimistic about humanity, to be like, look, we'll come out of this stronger. I think like we're gonna lose some people along the way, but honestly I think that the people we lose are gonna be mostly like, it's not gonna be the young kids, right? I mean, yes, they have different struggles now for sure, but a lot of them are gonna come out being really strong. Like, I mean, yeah, like this Stanford girl, right, who passed away. Like, I'm sure all of her friends now, right, are gonna carry on her memory and legacy in a way that's like insane, absolutely insane. The empathy and compassion that they're gonna have, the awareness that and the keen sensitivity that they're gonna have is gonna be unparalleled, and also going through everything else that they're already going through, right? And so yeah, like I think I'm betting on the younger generation every time, and I'm betting that they'll be even better than us, like for it.
Yeah, I mean, they'll figure it out, is what you're saying. At some point, it like it's almost like the obstacle of this will make them stronger. So once they get through it, then they'll be stronger because of it. I guess I'm asking like, okay, say the mental health crisis thing is the obstacle. What does getting through it mean? What does that look like? What is that like? Is it like a psychedelic revolution? Is it like I don't know, religion makes a comeback, or at least spirituality in some way? Is it like what is it? Like what does it look like for someone to go from, hey, I'm having a mental health, or I wasn't in a good mental space, but then I figured it out and here I am. Um, what does that figured out look like?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
I realize. Yeah, go
you
ahead.
know what I'm trying to say, right? Like I mean, yeah, I agree with you. People probably end up figuring out one way or another, but what does the figure out look like on a individual level, but also on a societal level?
Mm-hmm.
Um, if we're in agreement that we have a mental health crisis right now, whatever that means. I mean, I know that gets said a lot, but um, let's
So
say,
here's my
go
yeah.
ahead.
I was gonna say I love the follow up question, and thank you for like bringing me back to the target here. One theory I have on that will be that a part of the reason why we have this mental health crisis is because more than ever there is pressure for you to be unique, more than ever, right? Like now that like SoundCloud rappers are gonna hit their stride and extend, right? Like TikTokers hit their thing and they just shoot up into the stratosphere. Like, you know what I mean? Everyone finds this thing, and they might already have, help boosters, whatever, right? But there are also examples of people who like maybe didn't have that help, but they found this niche, they found this thing, Twitch streaming, whatever, right? Gaming, and that basically this goes to Naval Ravikant's thing of like we live in a world with infinite leverages now, right? Like and that is both scary, like there's the overwhelming optionality for you, and the power rests with you now to figure out your own destiny, because you can't just like fall into this little slipstream and float down the river with a bunch of people, right? You actually have to go your own way. Um, but because of that and because of technology, like one, it's going to be really hard to find out who you are. But if you can find out who you are and who you vibe with, then you'll feel lonely for a little bit until you don't feel alone, because you'll meet people who actually see you for you and like you. And from personal experience, I remember that growing up, I had a lot of like in-person friends and stuff, but I did feel alone and separate from them, right? Like I didn't feel like, yeah, I could get along, yeah, I could play games, and yeah, we'd have fun, but like I still wasn't like with my peeps, right? And then with the internet and like being on like playing CS and joining a clan and joining these chat rooms, and I remember playing WoW and making friends on WoW, right? Like a lot of that was like a social outlet for me to feel like I was seen, to feel like I was able to be myself and do that kind of stuff. And so there's obviously, that taken too far can be really bad. You get addicted and live in that world, whatever. But like, I think most people are weird, right? Like most people have this weird thing that they tuck away, and they spend all this energy just covering it up. And I think that's part of why people have mental health issues, right? Because they're living inauthentically, and they're spending all this energy to like fit in and curve that, and then trying to like find this like marketable commodity in their character that they can put up front, but like society doesn't really care about it, like whatever that thing is, right? Like you're not funny enough, like you're not smart enough or good looking enough or whatever, musically talented enough. None of these things, like I can't compete with everyone else on these things. Like there's no way, I'm just not good enough, right? And that feels awful. And if there was no other outlet, that person just either they find a peace and they get really zen, and and they understand contentment, which I think is another way of approaching this too, right? Which is the Zen Buddhist approach of just, hey, just let it all go. That's totally also okay. Let it all go. Like this is all fake. But I think where you still have to like be a person with an ego and a persona. So it's like, find your thing and just be it, because there's 8 billion people in the world. And if you even tap into 1% of that, you'll have a whole country, right? Around you. So technology. I'm high on VR. I'm high on all these little things. Like, I haven't looked in the metaverse, but like I'm like high on people being able to like digitally connect with each other around like these like Discord channels and Twitch stream stuff, and like who would have thought you pay money to just watch somebody play a game, right?
So the end result is going to be a simulation within a simulation. Not a simulation, a simulation, not a simulation. Like the metaverse simulation, not a simulation as in everyone becomes the same thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's where it's gonna go. I don't think this is necessarily a good thing for society. Don't get me wrong. It's just like the only way forward, because we get so big. Like it's just a scaling problem, right? Like you can't go backwards. Can't put Pandora back in the box. It's open.
Is it because there's not like a meaning or something meaningful for people to, I guess, like ascribe to in the long term? You know what I mean? Like 40 years ago when our parents came over from like as immigrants or however, or whenever your parents came over too, the meaning that my parents derived from their life was, hey, we just got to this country together, and we want to build a life, we want to have kids, we want to take care of our kids, we want to, and so going to work, even if it's a job that you didn't like, was meaningful. You bring that back to uh raise your family and teach your kids like, like values, help them succeed in this country that's foreign to you. So for them, to derive purpose and meaning and all that stuff from that. But then like, is it nowadays it's harder to ascribe to something meaningful because am I okay? I might be ignorant when I say this. So there's this there's the disclaimer. Um, like if you talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like like nowadays is it easier to take care of rung one and rung two for a lot of people? So then when you start getting up to like rung three and rung four, where the thing that you need to find meaning in is something outside of you, perhaps. It's not as simple as, yo, if I have a meal and I can pay for it or whatever, uh, then that's the thing that's meaningful. Is that what's causing the mental health crisis? Does that play a role?
I think so. I think that's a valid like hypothesis. You know, I mean, like, yeah, I think it goes back to like I think you have to operate on this fundamental premise that like I don't say this in a disparaging way, right? That it is a first world problem. You know, that we've lifted more people out of poverty than like by the day than we've ever done at a rate, right? Like it's, and I'm talking about the global human universe, like right now, just America. And yeah, with social media, the crisis is happening because now people, you know what's the sad part actually, now that I think about it, this is where I want to say things are like, I also have a cynical side with technology, and everyone likes to talk about the cynical side, so I'm not spending too much time on that. But like, what's happening though is that with social media though, like even if you haven't taken care of your bottom rungs, like you are still trying to take care of that top one because everyone has a profile now that everyone sees and exists, right? And it's like high school has never ended because of that reason. Um, in terms of caring so much about how you're perceived and what you stand for. Because there's this interesting phrase I heard of recently of like, um, it's the idea that like these constructs can also be luxury items. Like, you know how like I wear Gucci for the season, and then as soon as it's not cool anymore, like, dude, I have to like go to the next one. But like, because now everyone can have an opinion, and everyone can like, everyone cares about where you stand and what you represent and what you affix to your like avatar, that you like, people have to pick all these things up now and put them on there and signal outward what they stand for. But those are things at the top of the list, like hierarchy. You're not supposed to be caring about those things, dude. Duncan Trussell has that quote where it's like, some idiot is sitting under a waterfall somewhere unaware of how angry he should be right now. Like, reality is that none of this stuff would actually make it to your like understand. Like, you wouldn't. Your brain is not meant to take this much negative news. But I digress. Anyway, I went a lot of places there, but
It would actually be pretty interesting if one of the major cues that you're taking in order to derive your personal worth is coming from social media. Like I do a lot of lurking on social media, so maybe there's some unconscious like cues taken, but I don't have a direct like I don't put shit on social media like from my personal life that much. So there's not as much of a, I guess, as much of a feedback loop in that regard. But it would be interesting if, like, let's say, I don't know, if you had like 50,000 followers and you make a post and you can see right away how many likes it gets compared to the one you put up before, or how many comments people and what they say in the comments about Steven or about whatever. And then that feeds back into like, like whatever my idea of hack is, or your idea of Steven, causing you to act a different way. Um, yeah, man, humans are probably the most interesting creature.
yeah. But it's funny though, right? Because like, if you were strong enough to play in that, right? You're actually leaving a lot of data on the table if you think about it, right? Because if the entire world is operating off these meta perceptions, and like, it would be cool. Like, I would want to know like what people thought of me, right? Like, it's like, oh, cool. Like they like that or they don't like that. Like, we don't really have that, and also everything is done digitally now, right? Even more so now that like everything is remote. Like, literally, you're just pixels on my screen at this point, and there's like companies that only do remote work now. Like more and more, the metaverse, digital, whatever, is the environment. Like, and you can choose not to play in it. You know, just like any game comes with risk, right? But this is the game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, technology is the game. Like, we all play. And to say like, oh, I don't want to be in it, you're leaving something on the table. Is all I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying everyone needs to do it. It's like,
Not that you don't want to be in it, but I think it'd be better to not be in it than to be in it and not know that you're in it. Like at least
right.
have a conscious choice as to, hey, like this thing is programming, you know, uh I guess I don't know, like the construct of yourself in a way.
Yeah. But that's the paradox of awakening and enlightenment, right? Is that you have to, but you have to go through it ignorant in order to awaken, right? You have to play out the game in order for you to get into the spot now where there's just like and then boom, you've awakened. Like for me, for where I stand today, I had to go through high school caring about all the stupid shit that what my friends thought of me, right? Like for most of us, we had to go through that, and we have to continually go through that until we burned away all of the like superficial stuff, and then something. Well, I mean, if we're lucky, we get something along the way, like a near-death experience or a psychedelic trip or whatever. But you know,
I mean, but even after those, it's not like you're like guaranteed like, yo, I'm I'm woke now, you know. Like you get reintegrated back into the system and you're just like once in a while you might come up for air and be like, oh, that was crazy. But then you go back under and you're in the thing again.
yeah,
Um, but I don't know. I mean, it's a fun game because it doesn't feel like a game, but it probably is a game. Maybe, I
yeah.
don't know.
Everything's a game, right? Everything's a game. Everything's a
Damn, we didn't even think about what the title of this podcast should be.
game. Asian moms and games and mental health. But it's about people. I mean, it's about identity again. It's like the construct of identity, right? It's like I always love the meditation path of like you watch your thoughts and you realize that all of these are thoughts, and then you realize that you are a thought, right? Like we're just talking about the construct of identity again.
It's still so hard to view yourself as a thought even when you know that intellectually. Because it's not like the yeah, it's not like you can just like, okay, I know that now. Um I wonder if that's what it means when people say don't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah, yeah. I love those little quotes, but then looking at it again afterward.
Yeah, I'm actually interested what happens in the next like, I don't know, 5, 10, or 15 years to see the direction that this mental health thing goes in. Um, I think optimistically speaking, I mean, hopefully there's some sort of a revolution in terms of um, inner awareness, something to that degree of people like understanding themselves better and knowing themselves better. Because I do think that's the first step in for a lot of people individually just to not solve, but at least be able to work with this thing, to be able to um I guess like have a chance at it.
Yeah, I think we might get another like psychedelic hippie revolution. Honestly, I think that this is like fertile ground for like another type of thing like that. And actually, when I was in LA, I went to see a Burning Man exhibit, or an exhibit by these three Burning Man artists, and it was in this uh, venue that was four big domes, and these were 3D artists and animators who like, dude, they made the most ridiculous use of technology and art to recreate and describe like like Hinduism, like the concepts of Hinduism, like the Ramayana and like different realms of like, you know, the different realms of existence and stuff, right? And it was like, I guess my point here is to say that like technology married with art and spirituality, because I think art is also the cure to mental health issues. By the way, art is the thing that like just this thing that can't be described or spoken that cuts straight down. If you can bring that into the digital world and then share it with the source seed, the source teaching idea, whatever, being, you know, if you believe in that, um, the vehicle doesn't matter as much, right? Like, you know, the Buddha had to go walk around and, you know, spread his teachings that way, but there's other ways this stuff can be experientially deposited into people's minds. Like YouTube, like Alan Watts with Alan Watts Chill Step.
Yeah, I do think yeah, because I was thinking about what I want to do. You know, if um you know, in the next like, you know, few years, if I had like you know, just free reign on what to pick, I think it'd be interesting to help with the mental health crisis in some sort of a way, since obviously that's going to be an issue that this next generation and even our generation is dealing with. Whether that come in the form of, I don't know, like I mean, like some of the stuff we stated, helping people understand themselves better. You know, maybe becoming a therapist, maybe through the psychedelic revolution. You know, if psychedelics, once they're like researched and passed through, and FDA approved and all that stuff, if there is a true mental health crisis and somebody knows how to administer, you know, certain psychedelics in the right settings and with the right intentions, then that could definitely go a long way. You know what I mean? Because a lot of the mental stuff, you just need to like have, you just need to be able to see clearly just for one moment to know that it's there, and that's kind of like the lead domino. I think for a lot of people, like to just know that it's there. So
I
that
love
could be
that, man.
a cool route, like a cool career. You know, imagine like just going down that path. Probably wouldn't even matter how much money you made. You know what I mean? Just helping people understand themselves better, in a way that positively affects their life and obviously society as a whole.
So you're trying to become a shaman.
Yeah, I think so, but it depends on how you want to use the word shaman, because like it because I still want to be in society, you know what I mean? I don't, so like it'd probably have to get rebranded to something else.
It would be. I mean, I mean, like Tim Ferriss's thing and all the big entrepreneurs and heads like throwing in, backing, yeah, psychedelic assisted therapies and stuff. Um, Especially like MDMA for PTSD is a big one, right? Um,
Yeah. I'm
yeah, I think
hoping
that's awesome, dude. I think that's
I'm
really awesome.
I'm hoping that what will happen is the psychedelic revolution, like they won't have enough like soldiers to like administer you know, like psychedelics to people in therapeutic settings, and the bar to achieve like right now you probably have to be like a psychiatrist or whatever to even be considered to like fuck around with something like that, right? But hopefully they just lower the bar down to like, I don't know, like what's like a what are people that graduate with 6 years in college, masters, you know, you'd be like a counselor or some shit and then be able to, I don't know, do that shit.
Dude, I hate to poo poo on that, but like, there's no way anyone below like a
I mean,
doctorate, like,
probably not. I mean, but they have like ketamine clinics and shit nowadays. I don't know who's in charge of those. Um,
Yeah.
but it could just be, or maybe it has to be a shaman thing where it's like, all right, you got to do it in a state where it's legal. You know what I mean? Like you probably go to Oregon and just be like whoever the fuck you want and just give anyone. I mean, I think Oregon legalized all drugs, right?
I don't know.
I think that's a true statement during pandemic they did so because the ayahuasca person shaman that I went to a couple of times, he moved from Guatemala to Oregon, I think, because of that. So I guess you can be a shaman and do it, but that's like a completely different you gotta learn a whole another like a whole nother world. Could be interesting
Yeah.
though. Or maybe just teach people meditation. Could do that too. I'll probably have to get better at it though.
There's also I had a seed planted in my mind as far as like facilitating retreats too. I know we both just got out of one, um, but I think that's also a really cool way to do it as well.
Yeah, I guess
You already kind of do that, by the way, Hack.
do what?
Like do retreat facilitation.
No, don't. Do I?
Yeah, you do. Like basically, this is my thing. This is my observation of Hack. Whoa, what is this cool thing? Let me go to it. Whoa, this thing is really cool. I want to like more people need to like experience this. All right, let me bring my the people I like care about the most and make sure that they can come have this experience because the other side of it is some type of I mean, there's like an enlightening that happens here, right? I'm not. I know it's a big charged word, but like really, like go to Yosemite and look at this thing. Go to this concert and experience this rush. Go to Asia and do this thing. Go to Burning Man and like, you're gonna come out of it transformed, right? In a way that normal society doesn't have that mechanism to like um, make it so you come in one way and you come out the other way, like another way, right? Like very few things exist like that, but they're transformative.
Yeah, I guess Burning Man is one of those things that does feel like you get pulled out and then you're out here for a week partying and then you go back in. But when you go back in, you're different. Um, it does feel that way. But I guess like a retreat, like for me, would be more like intentional, kind of like you know the shit that Hargobin's doing with his yoga retreat, and he's like, hey, just come out here for 2 days and reset or however long it is. I mean, I'm sure some people go out for longer. But it's um like relatively intentional. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah,
I'm gonna go do this.
a hundred
So
percent. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean we're talking about yeah future things, right? Which for them imply more, a little bit more structure, a little bit more intention, a little bit more framework. So, but I think there's something cool there too. But I think that said another way, you are a natural healer type, right? I think, um, you know. So I think that finding some there would be really cool for
healer is
sure.
a big word. I imagine people that are healers would be like more like your sister. You know what I mean? She's more like somebody that has like that empathy, like like in a video game, like when you look at someone and you're like, oh, that person's a healer. Like I see Kim would be like a healer type for a group. You know what I mean? Just because I think she has a lot of empathy, or it seems so. I don't know her obviously like super well or whatever, but um that's the vibe I get. Like a healer is like an empath in a way. It's like they understand you. They can help you through shit.
Mm-hmm.
Um I'm a lot more rigid, like rough around the edges. I'm
Yeah.
more like, hey, what did you say? Why'd you say that?
Well, that's I don't know. I think my definition is broad enough to be inclusive of both of all the different styles of healing, and I think that the fundamental common denominator, hands down, is listening, right, and creating space and holding space and and letting other people like come outside of them and fill. You know what I mean? Like drawing them out. And I think that people are comfortable talking to you. They come out of their shell, and you're able to like you know basically explain their predicament or the world in a way that's like humorous. It's like, oh yeah, like humor is the number one of the best things in the world. Like humor is magical, right? It's also a spell, and so I think there's something there. Um,
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny to think of myself as a healer because I'm just like, I think I'm just curious sometimes. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times, like, wait, why'd you say that? And then
yeah,
and it just goes down that path where it's like a rabbit hole into like the person's head.
Yeah.
And then when you get and sometimes people don't even ask those questions for themselves. So then like you might even be one of the first people to have asked them that, like, ever or in a long time even. And then they'll be like, why did I say that? And then once you get them asking the questions, then they're like, holy shit, you just uh you know what I mean? It's like you're asking them this question that they probably should have asked themselves. But a lot of times, like, it's easier to see that question from a lens of curiosity, from a third person perspective, than it is even to see within yourself. Like, I'm sure there's a bunch of questions that if I, you know, knew I should ask myself, I would probably ask myself, but it's just not apparent to me. But if I talk to like you or somebody that is a third person, you might be like, wait, why'd you say that? And I'm just like, I don't know why I said that. And then once I start like thinking about it, I'll be like, oh shit, like that thing Steven said like really resonated.
Yeah, you're making the case for yourself being a healer. That's what therapists do, right? They ask those questions. Like no one gets healed by another person. They heal themselves, right? They heal
Right.
themselves. Like I saw this thing on Twitter. It was like, oh yeah, therapy is like your therapist walking through your house and being like, damn, you really live like this, you know? Like that's all it is. It's like, damn, you really just keep all the dishes. You know what I mean? Like what? Oh yeah, that's so.
Maybe I should try to be a therapist. Like the lowest level therapist, I could probably go back to school for like 2 years or some shit and just be like a better help therapist and just talk to people on Zoom.
Yeah, and it's funny because you could just dictate your own hours and stuff like that, and just like hop on Zoom. I
Yeah.
think that'd be really interesting.
I wonder if that would be fulfilling. It might just be like, man, fuck, I don't want to talk to these people.
You
It's
don't know
more
till you try.
it's more fun when it's people you want to talk to, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
When this
yeah.
person's paying you and you have to be like, man, fuck, gotta see this dude again. And then you probably can't exactly be like, all right, sorry, man,
So there's a shortage right now. There's a absolute shortage.
of therapists.
Yeah, of all health like aid, like yeah, therapists, aid workers, and so yeah. I mean, I think now's a great time to try it out. Like it's like a pretty low barrier.
I'm hoping there's a shortage of psychedelic people in like 5 years, and they're just like, all right, anyone with 6 years of college can just do it. That'd be dope. That's
Yeah,
not gonna.
yeah.
I agree with that's not gonna happen, but um, because I'm thinking about it, like psychiatrists, like they're giving out like much lower um types of drugs, and they have to have a much higher degree. Imagine giving someone something that will like it's a mind altering like chemical. That's obviously not going to be allowed anytime soon. All right, I still don't have a title for the pod, but I feel like we should wrap up.
Mental
Uh,
health,
mental health.
healing. I don't know.
It needs to be something where somebody has to watch to a certain point of the pod in order to understand why we picked that title. But obscure enough, yeah, like the perfect amount of obscurity and I feel like you said something earlier that was I don't know. I'll come up with something unless you have something.
I don't have anything, so we'll think of yeah.
I'll think of something. Do we need a weekly challenge?
I think I want to like no weekly challenge this week. I'm in a
Oh,
reset moment. Yeah,
all right, weekly challenge would be to reset.
yeah, and I kind of like that the pressure is a little bit off on these podcasts, but we're still like getting the reps. Like I mean, I was like we're at 35, 36 now. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Like that number actually is really interesting in itself, right? Irrespective of everything else. So
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna wrap the podcast. I'll come up with a title later. I'll have to be something about Asian moms if I'm thinking about it.
yeah.
Let me pause this joint.